to welcome this magical, sacred dimension of life and to be open for the possibility that, yes, there are ascended masters who are constantly here to support humanity. Yes, there are ascended masters who 1,000 years ago could perceive what's happening on this planet today because their perspective of time is totally different than our limited perspective today.
Action!
Welcome to the Spirit of Yoga. In today's special podcast episode, we are welcoming one of my oldest, dearest friends on the spiritual path, my dear friend and brother, Stephan Lakshman, as I know him from the good old days. My, in a way, not meditation teacher, but almost, in a way, my tutor, the meditation practitioner who was sitting next to me throughout at least a dozen of 10-day silent meditation retreats. And I'm very honored to welcome him today in our Bollywood podcast film studio here, where we will explore a very special topic, which is actually related to my future, to his future, and maybe also to your future. My future is written on a palm leaf. And that is what I just discovered last week when I experienced firsthand the doorway, the pathway which Stephan is offering and opening to the world to access the future as it is written on my palm leaf in an Indian palm leaf library, where Stephan provides the possibility, without having to travel to India and all the hassles and struggles related to that, to just in an online Zoom meeting be able to meet a representative, a reader from this palm leaf library, and they find your special own unique palm leaf in this gigantic library, and then they make sure that it's really the right one, and then they start exposing your future to you. My future was exposed, and it was surprisingly, shockingly accurate already on some of the ingredients of the past months and half year. So I was blown away and was impressed. And my hypercritical, skeptical German mind was pretty impressed, to say the least. So welcome, Stephan, to this shared conversation where I will share some of my experiences with this palm leaf reading. But most importantly, of course, we want to hear from you how that whole process is unfolding. So maybe you can give an introduction of what this palm leaf library is about before we then come to the more practical hands-on experience as it happened to me.
Sure. And thank you for this warm, lovely invitation. Very happy to be here. Very happy to speak about my favorite topic, the Indian palm leaves. So what are the Indian palm leaves? According to the legend, a few thousand years ago in India, there was a group of sages called the Rishis. They were enlightened masters who had many paranormal powers. One of these powers was to perceive the future. They could look through time and see everything that ever happened, everything that will ever happen in all of existence. And they had a lot of love and compassion for humanity. And out of their love and compassion for humanity, they wrote down the future life stories of a few million people onto dried palm leaves. They were used, like paper today, to store information. They wrote down the future life stories of a few million people and stored them in temple libraries in India, called the palm leaf libraries, knowing that at some point, these people would come to these libraries looking for their palm leaf, looking for guidance, and then receive this timeless guidance and blessings of these rishis, of these ascended masters. So you can go and visit these libraries, search for your personal palm leaf with your name on it and other information to make sure it's really your palm leaf, and then have your future life story written to you together with guidance and recommendation how you can live the most fulfilling version of your own life.
Wow. That's quite an stunning, impressive, and shocking introduction and summary of what the whole mission, the whole project is about, which is in a way a project of Indian spirituality, of in a way their gift to humanity, to future seekers to come. In some ways, a pretty far out, bold claim, which can easily raise doubts in a scientific, evidence-based, modern, intellectual, rational mind, and can be kind of put in a similar area to like astrology, palm reading, palmistry, and more these esoteric alternative forms of human psychology, where frequently the scientific, modern, intellectual, objectifying, experimental, scientific mindset would come with a lot of concerns and doubts. And this is in many ways also how I am meeting astrology, and how I was also approaching this palm leaf reading, to which you encouraged me and invited me, where I came with this kind of like, really, like, let's see. So I came with this really, in a way, doubting mind, knowing already over the last decades that my hypercritical German intellectual mind, I studied critical psychology with a university degree from a German, proper acknowledged, like college, university study. So I studied their critical psychology. So I came with this hypercritical mindset, and I kind of like, let me see if that is really true. And one of the things you mentioned in the side sentence, that they do find your specific palm leaf. And that process is in a way, for them, important to make sure that it's the right one. And they do that via a fingerprint, which sounds a bit again like the palmistry thing, where I got again a bit kind of like skeptical. How are you going to find my right palm leaf with my right thumbprint? How will it be the correct one? And then they came with a whole stack of these palm leaves in the Zoom call. And then they were going through different samples of these palm leaves and asking me certain questions about the name of my parents, for example, and the family connection, and my brother, and how many kids he has, and so on. And I was just instructed to answer very short, simple, with yes and no, if this is correct, yes or no. And then with the name of my mother, for example, they were coming like very close. They kind of, does it start with this or that letter? Yeah, one of those three. With this letter? And so, yeah, correct. How do you know that the name of my mother starts with this letter? Okay, fair enough. Can be coincidence. Then, okay, does the name of your mother contain these 3-4 letters? One of those. And it's like, yes, no, 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 yes, no. And we went through a few examples where then they discarded quickly some of the leaves. Like, okay, no, wrong first name. Wrong, cannot be it. So, okay, next palm leaf. This is not yours. Doesn't match. But then on the like 4th, 5th leaf, they were like getting very close, narrowing in on the name of my mother. And like within 2-3 questions, they suddenly had all the letters of the name of my mother's first name. I was like, whoa, how is it possible? They didn't pronounce and say the name, but all the letters were correct. But then they suddenly asked a question about my father, my brother, something, and it didn't match. Is that the first name of your father? It's like, no. And then even though they basically had the name of my mother already right, they decided against it because they said like, yeah, okay, similar, but not the same. The name of your father doesn't match, so it cannot be you. So they discarded, this is not your palm leaf. So that continued on for a bit more, like maybe some 12, 15 leaves or so they went through. And suddenly, like, they narrow down. And then they say like, this, okay, this correct, this correct. And then suddenly he says, I think we found your palm leaf. That is a clear alignment, a clear match. And then he doesn't only give the first name of my mother, but also the first name of my father, and then the name of my previous life partner, and the first name of my current life partner. And we didn't talk about it before yet, and it's like, whoa. And then I was just kind of like, okay, I chill out and I'm open to receive. So my skeptical mind was convinced by this like incredible accuracy. My own name, which they also didn't know, I just provided my thumbprint and male born in Germany. So my own first name, which is pretty unusual, mother's name, father's name, old previous partner, and now current life partner, and all of them straight in. And I knew they couldn't know. My skeptical mind was, of course, thinking, maybe you gave it to them.
Yes.
You gave it away. But then I was thinking, yeah, you know the names of my life partners. Sure. Maybe you could know the name of my mother. Maybe. But the name of my father you cannot know because he passed away actually 5 years ago, and you definitely never met him, and I definitely never told you a story about him. And my mother would tell me if you asked her, and it's not on the internet. He's like kind of like pre online time. He doesn't have a face. He
It
didn't
seems
have,
like the easy explanation, no?
exactly.
You must know that.
It must be kind of you told him, but no, it cannot be even. No, like it cannot be. Nobody knows the first name of my father. Nobody knows it. Like nobody. So like in our online circles of my friends, and definitely not those guys sitting in South India there. And so anyhow, that was my kind of moment where I got turned around and where I was beginning to be receptive and be open to receive their message. So that my start on this critical perspective, trying to give it a try. We come later more to some other details, but this is how I got more open and at all willing to listen closer and to have more conversations with you about that topic. So I keep quiet for a moment because I want to learn more from your experience, because the point is that you give access for thousands of people to these palm leaves. So you have so many stories, anecdotes, also of other critical, skeptical people coming in. Maybe you can share some more anecdotes. Be honest, be sincere from your years and years of experience that you've been doing this. How did it happen? How can we explain it? What is happening there?
Yes. First of all, I fully understand the skeptical mind. I also approached it with that in the beginning. For a very long time, I looked at it with a very skeptical mind. I analyzed many readings. Now, can they know that somehow? And it took me quite a while to really let go of that. But now, after having observed hundreds and thousands of readings, I have deep trust in the authenticity of the palm leaves and the blessing that they bring. There's much more coming through these palm leaves than just a future prediction. I'm going to speak more about this soon, probably. But they're really a deep transformational process that can help us to really change the direction of our life. It's not just an entertaining way to know about our future. That's very fascinating, of course. It's very fascinating that they know the names of our parents written in that palm leaf in India.
How is it possible? I'm still puzzled by it.
But the palm leaves are about much more. It's a much deeper process. And we're kind of trained to be skeptical, to be analytical. And we often forget that this whole world is a miracle. That we are alive sitting here right now. That this universe exists is a miracle.
Let me interrupt you for one moment with a authentic quote by the famous Albert Einstein. Something paraphrased along the lines, there's only two ways how to see the world. Either nothing is a miracle, because it can all be scientifically, objectively explained, or everything is a miracle.
Yes.
And he was subscribing actually to the second perspective and had this sacred curiosity. So, exactly. In many ways, everything is a miracle.
Everything is a miracle. And we often forget about this sacred dimension of life. And while it's good to be skeptical, it's also good at some point to let go of that and to welcome this magical, sacred dimension of life and to be open for the possibility that, yes, there are ascended masters who are constantly here to support humanity. Yes, there are ascended masters who 1,000 years ago could perceive what's happening on this planet today because their perspective of time is totally different than our limited perspective today. But coming back to your question, yeah, over the course of time, I observed countless times, in this matching process, how information are revealed that no one could know about these people. Many tears, many heart-opening moments.
Yeah, it's shocking.
It's shocking, huh? Also for myself, my own first reading, I was amazed, but also it brought me a lot of wonderment and a sense of warmth of wow, someone could foresee that I will be walking on this planet thousands of years later, and it gave me a feeling of oh, I'm taken care of. That there are beings who are taking care of us humans, taking care of this planet while we're going through this massive chaos, suffering on a global and also individual scale often.
And share a bit more about the context. What are these palm leaf libraries and how to access them, that people get a bit more of an understanding. What is the process? Usually in India, I heard about these palm leaves 25 years ago when I traveled the first time to India. I heard about it, but first of all, I wasn't curious enough, and in a way, didn't have the momentum to take on the ordeal of finding such a library and then no finding the best one and where it's really reliable and how to get access. And I didn't dare to make a like 16-hour train ride through the Indian subcontinent and somehow approach such a place. I didn't feel the call back then. So how would it be if we would go in person? But how do you make it accessible now in a digital online way?
Mhm. I also went to my first palm leaf library in India, by the way, I think like 15 years ago already, out of curiosity. I didn't find my palm leaf back then, interestingly, but I was very touched by the whole experience because it felt very authentic, very real. I always remembered that visit. And it's only a few years ago that I had my own first palm leaf reading then. My first reading was also online. And I must say, the online experience can often be much more fulfilling than going to visit there in person, because the palm leaf libraries, they're not like how we imagine a library to be in the West with like beautiful building, a reception, and everything organized. It's much more chaotic. They are often decentralized places that kind of, the palm leaves are not just in one place. There are places where the palm leaves are stored, but they're also constantly circulating between all the different palm leaf readers. So the library is one institution where the palm leaves are stored, and the readers is another institution. No? They get the palm leaves from the library and then read the palm leaves to the clients. So going to find a palm leaf library in India is not easy. No? I went to many. I visited more than 25 libraries in India 25. By now. Most of the experiences were not as fulfilling as the online experiences I had. Because the online experiences, they are much more structured. You can organize everything beforehand. You know there will be a translator. Not the case in nearly all libraries. Huh?
Sure.
There is no use if you visit a library. Most likely it will be closed. If you're lucky, it's open. But then if there's no one who speaks English, you can't have a fulfilling reading. So that's why the online readings can be more fulfilling, because everything is prepared already, so that for you as a non-Tamil or Hindi-speaking person, you can still have a proper palm leaf reading.
Interesting. Yeah, exactly. I've been traveling in India a lot, like dozens and dozens of times, and knowing how chaotic things can be and how challenging it can be to find this or that basic, even like just to find the train station can be a challenge, not to mention some obscure hidden palm library and then get access and meet the right person and so on. So maybe let's get more clear in what is written on those leaves and how is it matched, and see, on the one hand, there's something of the past, so the name of the parents, etc., which I had so shockingly in my face, which in a way opened my eyes and my understanding to that there is something relevant. So I in a way had this compelling, convincing initial experience. And then they were also exposing some details of, in a way, the last year of my life, where I was also pretty surprised. Some turns, some shifts, some events which happened, the timing of some changes, downturns, generally knowing a lot about what I'm at all doing with this whole yoga school. So some inspiring insights, which were like, whoa, how come you know about this and that? So there was, in a way, an additional compelling context which they were giving, opening some of my background of the past, which there I can kind of agree upon, and I have my own experience. I know what happened in the last months pretty accurately, but again, how can they know about it?
Yes.
So there was kind of an additional reconfirmation after this dropping of the names, which was for me like a mic drop, kind of like, so they topped it up with some more context of the past year, and then they were going more into the anticipation of what's to come. What I found kind of soothing is that they were very well articulate in presenting the context, and also without making it too deterministic. It's not kind of this will happen then, but more there's a certain likelihood. Even the guy was well versed, speaking in percentages, kind of, oh, you have a tendency towards, and then interpreting certain areas of life, like family life, relationship, business success, career topics, etc. And he was kind of evaluating how well I'm set up for these things. Generally, there's a tendency that it could turn out like this, like 50%, 80%. He was literally giving percentages to kind of, there's a certain possibility that in 2-3 years, when you will be 49, 52 years old, this, that, then this is likely to happen. So I appreciated this kind of tendency without being too narrowed down, fixed on the exact things which would happen, which gives me at least also some freedom to maybe change something about the course of my future. Maybe you can speak a bit on this unfolding of the reading, etc.
Yes, so there are many things to speak about from what you just described. I start with the combination of free will and determination.
Mm-hmm.
The palm leaves describe the most likely future timeline that you're on. On the moment, on the day when the palm leaf reading is happening, you're on a certain timeline, and it describes the most likely future that you are going to experience based on the karma and the energy of that day. And in my experience, it's in about 80% it will happen as described in the palm leaf. For most people, it's 100%. For some people, it's 50, 60, but on average, maybe around 80%, it will unfold as it's written on the palm leaf. And the purpose of the palm leaf is actually not to tell you your future, even though it does that. The purpose of the palm leaf is to help you to shape your future. It gives you insights about what's the karmic trajectory that you're on. What's the experience that you're most likely going to attract? But it also tells you what you can do to change certain karma to get the most fulfilling experience out of that journey that you're on. So the purpose of the palm leaves is to transform karmic blockages into karmic potential and to actively shape the future of your life within the framework of your karmic potential.
Exactly, that it's not kind of no blind faith written in stone. The destiny is kind of like, oh, I'm screwed. This is kind of like going to happen to me. But rather the other way around, there is a certain tendency because of personality, life choices, circumstances, etc. And in this way, I'm kind of aware, almost like in a psychotherapy, psychoanalysis, where I understand my life circumstances, my tendencies more clearly. I'm aware of those, like you called it, karmic trajectory, like unfolding grooves where it kind of tends to go. And then I can actively do something about it and shape my future and do something to prevent certain negative outcomes and actively, I don't want to say manipulate, but shape the future.
Yes.
And make preferable choices, etc. So not just kind of like a stamp written in stone that's your destiny, blind faith, but kind of a bit like psychotherapy. You have a tendency to be like this and like that. If you develop and counterbalance and counteract, you can harmonize these tendencies and have a more beneficial outlook in a way.
Yes. The palm leaves work a lot on the dimension of karma.
Mm-hmm.
We often forget about karma because you can't see it, smell it, touch it. But it basically determines every experience for our life.
Mm.
The reason that both of us were born in Germany and not in China or the United States. And the reason that we were born to the families that we were born, which created certain imprints, certain like conditionings, also certain traumas, that then influenced our whole life, is all due to karma.
Mm-hmm.
How we act in certain situations is, we can call it due to our psychological conditioning. That's one way to describe it. The other way is just to say it's according to our karma.
Mm-hmm.
And the palm leaves work on this dimension of karma, which is ultimately the root cause for all of our experiences, for all of our joys, for all of our suffering.
Looking for a short moment on the topic of karma. In modern US slang, they would say, let's double click on this.
Yes.
So karma, literally translates as action, and in a more process-oriented understanding, we could call it the law of action and reaction. I do something, and that has certain consequences. And in this way, it's actually not spooky, far out Asian esoteric fantasies at all. It's just I do something, there's a certain consequence. It's actually very much scientific. There's action and reaction. So cause and effect, we would call it,
Yes.
in the academic, scientific, objective context. So I did certain actions in the past, and they have kind of reminiscence, have consequences in my current life circumstances. I made a mistake of this or that bigger type. I screwed up big time or something, and then of course I got to face the consequences. Whatever, can be even legal, judicial consequences, or an accident, or relationship, conversational, or whatever. So I made certain choices. I made a choice, and then of course I got to live with the consequences of those choices. So that helps me to, in a way, objectify this kind of magical, unclear black box of the karma, the blind faith, as I mentioned before.
Yes.
What does it actually mean? So it's, my current life circumstances are, of course, the result of previous choices I made, whatever, of education, career, relationship, moving, this, that, and so on. And then what I can, of course, also understand that it's a lot about the education, the nurture, how I was brought up by my parents. So, for example, both of my parents were born in 1940 in Germany. That's actually in the middle of the Second World War, which was 39 to 45. Wow. That's a pretty tough situation to be born, like right in the middle of the Second World War.
Yes.
And directly after World War period was, of course, also very devastating in so many ways. So that's a pretty tough life circumstances to be born in. And of course, they had certain personality characteristics coming from the first 5-10 years of their life, undoubtedly, that will have changed and shaped their life. And of course, some of that kind of mindset will have been passed on to me as well. Whatever, my mother, tries to always pack a picnic or something, like always have a good snack with you to be on the safe side. And she's a bit on the hoarding mentality, we can understand, or something. And that
Yes.
transmitted over to me. So in this way, coming back to the topic of karma, action and reaction. So life circumstances that I was born in, which are even beyond my individual choice, of course, are shaping my psychology, my life circumstances, and so on. So I can understand the karmic context like this. Maybe you can speak a bit more from the context of the bigger perspective, karmic tendencies, collective, individual. How does that relate to the palm leaves, the past, the future, etc.?
So many things to speak about. Well, karma in the palm leaves. In the palm leaves, there's often a concept of doshas. Doshas can mean many things. In this context, it means karmic blockages. And there are actually different types of doshas. There can be Mangalya dosha, for example, is a relationship blockage.
Mhm.
Or Kudumba dosha is a blockage on the level of family. Maybe someone's parents might die very early in life, like while this person is a child. This person most likely has Kudumba dosha, a family blockage that leads to this experience. And so in the palm leaves, they can easily see what are the karmic blockages that a person might have. There are many different types. And then they also describe different so-called remedies for them, like ways to heal that karmic blockages, to bring transformation into that. And maybe even to turn this blockage into potential.
Okay. So also solutions, remedies
Solutions are
offered.
given. Yeah.
Exactly. In a way, counterbalance. No? If we
Counterbalance,
come
yes.
again from this Western mindset, there's a tendency, there's a predisposition, a talent or a negative talent tendency in my family constellation, etc. Whatever, my parents were like this or like that. And then how can I counterbalance that? Whatever, I'm an angry personality. This is where I need to cultivate more compassion to not cause more trouble for myself, etc.
Yes.
And maybe I inherited that anger from my father or something like this. So in a way, also breaking with some of these individual and collective tendencies, and interrupting this karmic trajectory, and in a way being in charge, taking control over my future, and counterbalancing, counteracting, etc.
Yes. We might think we take control, but we're just receiving the grace basically. Because often these karmic blockages, they're so strong, it's very hard for us to get out of them.
True. We're
And-
hardwired sometimes on these levels.
Yes,
Sure.
they are our psychological structures. It's
Sure.
really hard to get out of it. But through the grace and support of advanced beings like the Rishis, for example, or also in general, like living advanced spiritual masters, through their help, it's sometimes possible to temporarily get out of that mindset, and then from the outside to work on the energetic blueprint that has created that conditioning. And by doing so, we might first just experience a slight shift in our inner experience and our energetic experience, but this slight shift on the long term will bring us to a totally different outcome than if you would have stayed on that trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one, because of the long course of our life, like a small decision can then, in the big picture, have a massive impact and change our whole life's journey. If we study this or that, or meet this person or that person, go down this or that alley,
Yes.
can make a huge difference. With a famous metaphoric explanation, when you do like a long boat journey and you try to head towards a certain direction, like with a compass, trying to head exactly towards whatever one island, one place where to go with the boat. If you're just off like 1-2 degrees,
Totally
you'll
different
end
way.
up kind of in the long run, after like hundreds or thousands kilometers of a journey, you end up in a completely different place, even if you're just a little bit off. So choosing wisely and then being aligned in a way also with our life mission, the deeper intuition, our destiny, without having that as a blind faith, but more like an inner calling slash kind of what life has in place for us. What are we meant to do in this life? How do we contribute to our own well-being, in our family, but also in the bigger picture to humanity?
Yes.
So in a way also, how does my individual puzzle piece fit into the bigger picture would be another famous metaphor for that. And that understanding can of course help to align
much.
ourselves.
And basically, the more fulfilling we live our own life, the more we also contribute to the whole. So one of the purposes of the palm leaves is also to shift all of humanity out of this like dark chaos that we're in right now into a much more brighter future that we all feel in deep inside that is possible also. But we also look at the world and we're like, what the fuck are we doing with this planet?
Exactly.
But we feel that a totally different world is possible.
Exactly. Just around 1.5 years ago, a dear, very serious, advanced business friend of mine was giving exactly that statement when I was giving a sharing about our yoga school. I remember still his statement on that. Deep down inside, we all know what's appropriate.
Yes.
Every human being has a sense of kind of like, this would be the preferable wise choice. But frequently it's kind of hidden and obscured and covered and overlaid with other crazy tendencies and influences, conditionings, manipulation. And in this way, we can lose track of this deepest calling of our heart.
Yes. And the Rishis saw that coming already. There's this concept of the yugas that you're very well aware of, which are different cycles of time that have a major impact on the consciousness of humanity and how we co-create this earth. And according to this worldview, right now we are in the darkest of these time cycles in the Kali Yuga, where the consciousness of humanity is very low. We have co-created a world that's based on greed, fear, and destruction, basically. But the good news is that after this dark time, there will be another cycle where the consciousness of humanity is going to blossom into its full potential, where we remember who we truly are, where we co-create a world based on connection, love, and abundance for everybody. And the Rishis wrote the palm leaves partially to support us through these dark times and to guide us back into this bright future.
Exactly. A lot of hope and, in a way, trust in the process and the support, a guidance, as you also described it, that we're not lost alone in the confrontation with all the challenges and all the ridiculous madness that is unfolding on the planet, to not, in a way, participate in an active uh, way into all the negativity, which the tendency from the media and the collective subconscious is coming so strongly, that impulse, to avoid getting sucked into this negativity.
Yes. Yeah, often when I look at the word, and if I ignore all of these divine forces, I think this world is done. It's over. We've destroyed it.
Yeah.
But if you remember that there are these divine forces, that there are these cycles of time, that right now it's meant to be like that. And afterward, it's meant to blossom again. Gives me a lot of hope.
Exactly. Comes in seasons also.
Yes.
And that's both individually, throughout the day, throughout the month, throughout the year, but also collectively. There's certain cycles and seasons. And it's, of course, always a mixed cup. It's not only black and white, but there's so many shades of gray in between. And luckily, it's not just a black and white movie, but colors of the rainbow. And it's always a mixed cup.
Yes.
And it's, in a way, also our intention, how much we focus on the negative, dark aspects. And yes, there can be also some beneficial shadow work to be done. And like even also with these palm leaf readings, to see like, there is a certain blockage, there's a certain tendency. What can be done to harmonize, alleviate that, and then be less distracted by it, to focus more actively on the beneficial and uplifting ingredients of a high vibe way of being.
Yes. And that's also my motivation for this work. I'm fascinated by palm leaves. It's amazing to know about our future, but it's about much more. I'm much more fascinated about this dimension of the timeless masters, this dimension of turning these dark times into a bright future for humanity. By inviting these divine forces to uplift us and take us out of this karmic whirlwind that we're often in.
Yeah. And in a way, there's like I spontaneously see three elements in that. On the one hand, the stories about the names of the parents and some facts about the past, which are kind of impossible for them to know. That's especially for the Western mindset, like a door opener, like to overcome this hypercritical doubting mind. So that's, in a way, a key ingredient to get started. And then the curiosity about the future. The mind, of course, loves to know and anticipate and prepare, and would have this kind of almost like childlike curiosity to wanting to figure it out and prepare and so on. So the past helps to open the door. The future is kind of like quite curious and exciting. But underneath those time-based prophecies and all the rest of the magic related to that is this underlying timeless wisdom, which is beyond whatever happened in the past and future, this eternal present moment where, as you said, these palm leaves were, in a way, provided by the Rishis, by those awakened masters of not only a few hundreds, but a few thousand years ago, where they were, in a way, having as their main intention to awaken themselves and the beings around them, and in the following generations to come, to that eternal, timeless present beyond past and future. And to maintain, sustain that profound wisdom is, I assume, at the core of such a spiritual project, which these sages and rishis of the past were intending. So maybe you can speak more about also this spiritual dimension of the palm leaf libraries and these readings.
It's deeply, deeply spiritual. There are so many layers to it. Also, to give an understanding of the context of who are the rishis, as we're here, we are in the Akasha Yoga Academy. Yoga means union. The whole concept of yoga was brought to this planet by the rishi Patanjali, who was one of the rishis, actually.
Okay, Patanjali is considered to be one of the rishis.
Yes.
And just for context, most of you are aware that the Yoga Sutras is one of the most fundamental scripture of the Indian yogic tradition. And the author of these Yoga Sutras is the sage Patanjali, who is also considered to be one of those rishis in the Indian tradition around 2000 years ago. The exact birth time is debated. 500 before, 500 after Christ, around 2000 years ago, we can roughly say. So the Rishis, these sages, these seers, saints, yogis of something like 2000 years ago were coming from this very spiritual intention, introducing these altered states of consciousness, the states of samadhi described very thoroughly in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, known as the Raja Yoga, the royal, superb path of yoga. So how does that relate to the Indian palm leaves?
Well, yoga is one tool
Uh-huh.
to achieve that.
Okay.
The palm leaves are another tool. There are many tools. Another Rishi was the Rishi Dhanvantari, who brought the beautiful science of Ayurveda to this planet.
Yeah.
And the Rishi Agastya, he wrote many of the palm leaves, for example. This was one of his main channels to bring wisdom to that planet. So he helped people more on the individual level to clear their karma, while yoga helps us through practice to unlock our own self-realization. But for many people, they don't even have the karma to practice yoga. So the palm leaves might help us to first clear certain karmic blockages to be able to then maybe go deep into yoga, maybe go deep into healing or many other paths as well. So the palm leaves are one powerful of many tools.
Interesting. Yeah. And any correlation overlaps with meditation and other practices? For example, I'm curious, the remedies which are recommended to overcome those karmic blockages that we talked about before, there might be some ceremonies, some offerings. What other yogic practices would be recommended to deal with these karmic tendencies, trajectories, as you called them? What to do about them?
So the remedies are the recommendations that are given to transform certain karmic blockages, and they can come in many different forms. A very common form is the recommendation to do certain pujas, certain ceremonies, which are done to invoke a very specific energetic frequency into our system. It can happen in many different ways. It's usually described in the palm leaf what exactly you should do to do that. Now, it's important to know that while the palm leaves are coming from the Indian tradition, they're not bound to the Hindu faith. They were written for people from all faiths and beliefs, and they also appreciate every tradition.
Exactly, because also the Indian subcontinent is such a multi-religious, multi-spiritual subcontinent where there's such a mix and diversity, with Buddhism being born in India, and then Hinduism is actually not just one religion. It's like so many different faiths and beliefs and yogic traditions, and the Muslims and Christians in India and so on. It's a very multicultural and multi-religious subcontinent, which of course already back then was a huge topic. So not limited to just the Hindu faith in the closer sense.
Yes. So often those pujas can be on, just give a random example, on 5 full moon days, do puja for Shiva and Parvati, which are 2 Indian deities. But it's not about changing your belief and worshipping an Indian deity. It's about invoking a certain energetic frequency that will help you to exactly bring that impulse into your karmic field that then will unlock a certain process that helps you to exactly work on a certain karmic blockage and transform that. To give you maybe one example, in my own palm leaf reading, I was told to many things, but it said on 5 Wednesdays to a puja for, I think it was Vishnu, which is a specific frequency that you invite into your being. I was in Turkey at the time. It was dark Corona time, very challenging. There were no flights, lockdowns, this crazy time back then. And I strongly felt I should go from Turkey to Mexico to visit one of your teachers and to visit a community that I spent quite some time in before. I feel like I need to go to Mexico somehow. But I felt so blocked. There were no flights. It was a time full of fear, impossible to move.
Lockdown.
And then I did this puja, Wednesday evening puja for Vishnu. And then my mind immediately changed. And I had a lot of confidence, like, no, I should go to Mexico. It's important. I booked and I found a flight, 2 days later, I was flying to Mexico.
And just open the door
It
somehow.
opened the door. And in Mexico, it was so important for me to go there. Many things happened. It was also the birthplace of my palm leaf, basically. So it was very important for me to go there. And it was only due to that shift that happened when I applied that recommendation by doing that puja. Otherwise, I would have been too stuck in my fear. And then all the doors opened.
Interesting. Very interesting. So for you, how does it experientially in such examples and stories, how did it continue to open for you doors? How does it support your own spiritual journey? And then as a follow-up question, how with your big organization, which you have been growing over the last year so strongly, how did you experience that it supports other people's spiritual journey?
First, about my own experience. When I had my own reading in 2020, I was in a very confused place. I was depressed, heartbroken. My work had collapsed. I was totally lost, kind of. I didn't know. I didn't see my path anymore.
I remember actually also you were messaging back then, like also from the winter. I think you were in Canada first and then in Germany, cold winter or something.
It was a very difficult time.
I remember slightly. Just now as you mentioned it, it comes to my mind. I remember, yeah.
And then one morning, I was staying in my parents' house, in my old bedroom, visiting them. One morning, I woke up and I said, my palm leaf. I need to find my palm leaf. It was such a strong impulse that came. Then immediately, I was still half sleeping. I was Googling palm leaf online. And I found someone who's doing the same work like we do today, helping people to find their palm leaf. I booked an appointment. A few weeks later, I had an appointment. It was such a wonderful and blessed experience and moment for me. And from then on, step by step, my life totally changed gradually. I started to feel my path again. I started to see it. Things fell into place. Certain people came into my life. And now looking back a few years later, my life has totally changed. Every area of my life uplifted tremendously. I was also in a very difficult time, but it really brought me to a totally different place.
Interesting.
And also, what happened after the palm leaf reading was that I had a very strong impulse. I felt like I should work with the palm leaves. It's my work to help other people to find that as well. And then magically, everything came into place. I met the right people who also felt the same impulse. I spent time in Mexico, which was perfectly to do these first steps. And now over the course of a few years, it has grown into a very professional organization in many different countries. But it feels like it was not me doing that.
Yeah.
I was just like
the catalyst.
Everything was kind of magically guided to do that. So I could always feel the Rishis guiding and wanting the palm leaves to be brought out into that world. Coming back to a previous topic, the chaos in India.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Not
Very
easy.
chaotic,
Not
very
easy.
chaotic.
Like how to even organize anything there.
And the palm leaves, the world of palm leaves, it's not organized in a centralized way. It's many different readers, libraries, and just doing their own thing. And those palm leaf bundles, they're often circulating from one place to another, from one reader to another, to the library, and so forth. But they are nearly always in the exact moment in the right place to be read for the person that's coming on that exact day to find their palm leaf. There's a divine force organizing, orchestrating all of that in the background.
Pretty incredible. Wow. Maybe to close, a few other stories, because you've been providing this opportunity to thousands of people by now. Maybe you can share some other experiences, maybe of friends of yours or some people in your community, how it helped them with some spiritual openings or some like surprising alignments, synchronicities, etc. Maybe anything which comes to mind.
We get hundreds of emails basically of people telling us, hey, thank you, this brought so much guidance into my life and I feel like I found back to my path. That's something we very often hear. I must also say there are also some people for whom it doesn't work. They're actually, I didn't feel that much, which is fine from thousands of people if there are some it doesn't work with. But I also remember one person who wrote us a very angry email. Hey, in my palm leaf it said like, I don't remember exactly. I think like I would meet my partner and we would be together and have a child. Or now we are separating. It's all a scam. I want my money back.
Yeah. Sure, sure.
4 weeks later, the
Yeah.
same person wrote an email. I'm so sorry. Actually, this was just a temporary experience. Now we're back together in harmony, and everything is happening exactly as described in the palm leaf. And that happened a few times, this kind of dynamics.
Wow.
But also, as I said before, not everything happens as described in the palm leaf. So it's not something to take in as like, they said it, so it's going to happen for sure. No, they said it to give you guidance. And then it's up to you to apply that guidance and to still live the best you can do. No, you still need to
Sure.
make a lot of effort to live the highest potential of your life. But it gives you a certain guidance of what can happen.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And I'm definitely extremely curious how the predictions that came towards my upcoming months and years, how they will play out. Some of them were very uplifting and inspiring. Some of the challenges, blockages, they announced that they might last a bit longer than I would hope for. So let's see. I'm curious. I will definitely report back in the next months and years how things will unfold. And we'll also send you some messages reporting back and confirming how things aligned or did not align, how also some of the practices and remedies might help, etc. So I'm very excited after this surprisingly, shockingly accurate start on the kind of the past and name matching thing, how it will unfold over the next weeks, months, and years, how much these predictions will hold true. So for me, it's a new terrain, a new opening towards the mystery, as we mentioned initially. So reconnecting to the realm outside of our rational intellectual mindset, which for me in some ways comes natural and easy, working with energies and altered states of consciousness. And I have a variety of experiences over the last years and decades where it's very clear to me that, of course, there's a lot more than the rational intellectual objectifying mindset. So on the one hand, it's clear, but still then my limiting beliefs of the rational hypercritical mind kick in and make me again very skeptical. So it's a nice also reopening to see those other realms of existence. So I'm excited what the future will hold, if it will hold true. 80%, as you suggested.
Can be 100.
Can be 100,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
What's written on the palm leaves. I will remain critical, like, isn't it just a self-fulfilling prophecy and so on? So I will continue to have doubts, but I will try to relax into them and take it in a neutral way, as I did from the beginning on. Critical, but not hypercritical, to keep an openness, keep a neutrality, and see what life has to offer. So thank you for introducing me to this profound spiritual and esoteric inner circle wisdom of the palm leaves. It's been a refreshing surprise, a shocking confrontation. So I trust that the process will continue to unfold. And yes, my palm leaf, if people are interested, they can find it online and take a look. Feel also when the time is right. One interesting thing,
Yes.
what you mentioned for me, that it's even in a way prepared that they would know when people find their palm leaf, that even that is kind of anticipated. So maybe you can speak for a moment on this timing topic, when the kind of intuition, the calling is right. For me, it was actually also delayed a bit. Like, actually, it just comes to my mind now. Even last year, you mentioned it to me that we could do something like this, and you invited. But then I was kind of not ready yet.
Yes.
And 1 year later now, we took the leap forward. So best if we just let people find their own solution and their own timing. So without further ado, I'll leave it as a blessing for people to take it to the next level. And I encourage you to really make a difference in your own life and choose wisely and make sure that you keep shining in the spirit of yoga. So this was the Wisdom in Motion with my wonderful friend Stephan, and I trust that we continue also over the next 20 years
Yes.
to continue to flow together, and our shared future will unfold with trust and surrender. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
and
Burkhard.
Keep
Thank
on
you.
shining.